welcome to Adobe Live. I am Danielle Morimoto, and I am your host today. I'm a senior experience designer here at Adobe, and we are joined with our very special guest, Charlie Waite.
Thanks for having me 2 days in a row.
Yes. Yeah, so today is our second day with Charlie. He was here yesterday designing live in Adobe XD, and we'll give a quick summary as to what he did yesterday in a second in case you missed anything. And he's going to be basically working on designing out a surf app and talking a bit about design systems. So let us know where you guys are all streaming in from. I see a lot of people, Julia, Omar, JC. Welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining us. Today we will have another chat and win. So we have a jam-packed schedule. We had a couple people on earlier today with the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. We had the digital imaging with Luke. And then just before us, the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge was announced. So make sure that you're working on those. And then Charlie and I will be here for the next 2 hours. So I hope that you guys will stay with us. We are going to be taking a look at the Daily Creative Challenges later on in the stream, and Charlie and myself can give some feedback on those. All right, let's see. We have people from Dominican Republic, India, UK, Minneapolis. I think Justin was on here yesterday. I see some familiar names joining us, so
more
thank you.
More global today.
Yeah, a bit more global. We had, London, the Caribbean.
Awesome.
Awesome. So yeah, in 30 minutes we'll have a chat and win, and so stay tuned to make sure that you're over in Behance chatting for a chance to win some Sticker Mule stickers. You'll be able to win 10 3x3 Sticker Mule stickers. Awesome. So I'm going to hand it over to Charlie. You can sort of reintroduce yourself for those who don't know you and sort of give us a sense of what you were working on yesterday.
Cool. Yeah. So thanks. Charlie, designer, currently at Uber. Before that, I was design director over at GoPro. And then prior to that, working at agencies. So kind of done a little bit of everything in that product space now and loving it. Also avid surfer, which kind of leads us into the app we were designing yesterday. Maybe I can just kind of do like a little overview of what we accomplished yesterday and where we're going to go today. Yesterday we really kind of focused on setting up the project. We did get a name. We're super excited about the name.
Oh, we did get a name.
The name
did
and the
we?
logo. Yes, we definitely got the name. Maybe we'll hold that for a second for the big reveal. I kind of just went through my process and kind of how I set up my files, how I kind of work through starting a product or project from scratch, and then also thinking through how I take that into a design system. We're going to get more into that today. We built out some wireframes, and then we started to play around with and identify some of the system things. And we talked a lot about Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
So if you didn't watch it yesterday, you should probably watch it. So you're up to speed for today.
But don't worry, we'll talk about it more. There's so many things
pretty much
geared up for today.
Yes,
That's all we have. Yeah.
Let's actually put Keanu.
Oh, yes, please add it to the intro.
Is that it or is it AVS? Sorry, Keanu. We'll leave it like that.
No, it's good.
So today we'll kind of look back at the wireframes we did yesterday, and then we'll jump into more like the visual design and actually start to hone in. I was thinking we'd spend a little bit of time on the splash page, so that way we can get the brand in there, and then actually start working on some the form fields. It's always a good system component when you start talking about air states and active states and things like that. And then probably jump into the feed page, kind of another good, I think, spot for a lot of system work, and probably spend most of the day in those 2 pages, and then depending on time, we'll see where we end up. And then maybe at the end, if we have time, start kind of talking about some the non-pixel parts of the process of design systems and things, because I think those are super important as well. And like we said, Keanu Reeves.
Sweet, yeah. Julia in the chat says, I'm working on a Matrix app. I'm like, very timely with that movie coming out in 2020. Yeah, Perfect. But if you guys have any questions, obviously about Keanu Reeves or around his design process, my design process, career questions, or just anything around Adobe XD, send them through the chat. We're here to engage with you guys and just have a good stream for today.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's do it. So the big reveal, I don't remember who brought it up, but Point Break was easily the winner yesterday. So that is going to be the name of our app. I feel terrible not knowing who it was now. But yeah, so I took some time yesterday after the stream just to kind of get in and tweak a few things that I wasn't loving, and then actually kind of went in and started wiring up the splash page since we didn't do it yesterday. But yeah, like today I said, let's jump into more of the visual focus and then start building out that system. So I've got some artboards already here. So splash page, everything's already named. I'm gonna jump over. I grabbed an image that I thought would be pretty good for the background. Let's copy that guy, bring it over here, center it up here somewhere.
Yeah, and I feel like for those of you who are just joining us or didn't see yesterday's stream, Charlie started all the way with like hand-drawn sort of wireframes at the very beginning, and then like all from like sketches, and then went all the way through yesterday's stream of kind of getting that low fidelity. So if you want to check that out, obviously check out the video from yesterday. But otherwise, we're kind of bringing it all the way forward, bringing in some more visuals and getting into a bit more of the Keanu photos.
Oh, don't wait. You just wait. I've got a whole folder
so
dedicated.
Did I do research last night? Am I prepped with like some quiz questions for later? Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait. Okay. I'm very excited. I didn't sleep last night. I was so excited. Cool. So let's see. I kind of obviously not spending a ton of time on the branding. I just kerned out the Proxima Nova font that we were using to give us this logo. Looking for a good place for it here on the splash page. Kind of dig in this like little split of the surfer here. It looks pretty good. I talked about it yesterday, just kind of like file management, and like I'm pretty obsessive about this. I think everybody's a little bit different. I like to do it. It creates less work kind of at the end when you're kind of done with the project. It's always hard to go back. So I kind of like to put everything in the right groups, label everything, get going in there. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's go in here. The nice thing about starting in that kind of like lo-fi world is you're already setting up kind of your work. So you can kind of go in there and start grabbing components and then you're really kind of polishing them off kind of in this higher fidelity version, which is nice. So you got some tagline. You got a good tagline. You watched the movie last night.
I did do my research and watch because I hadn't seen the movie. Watched it last night.
Just insane that you haven't seen it.
No, do I have a good tagline?
You have a good tagline? There's a lot of good Point Break quotes. Maybe we should ask the audience.
If in the chat, let us know if you have a good quote that we should use from the movie Point Break for our tagline.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
All right, we'll leave something really intriguing would be great here. Tagline for now. Cool. So splash page. Obviously, you're thinking about first-time experience, so need some sort of login, some sort of sign-up feature. On the wires, I went with this more kind of like standard form. I'm thinking because we've got this kind of cool background, maybe we can do something a little bit more fun from a visual aesthetic. Let's see here from a typesetting. 20. Let's start with 20. See how that goes here. Maybe we'll just do like a line. Lines are pretty cool. Good old form fields. Definitely one of like the biggest system-wide things. I think, form fields, there's so many instances of, active, hover, air states, success, especially depending on what type of product you're working on. It's always a good place to start to, flesh out that style, see where you're going.
We have one quote that came in, which is 100% pure adrenaline. Quote.
We'll put that
got
in
that
here.
so far.
That's pretty good.
Or anything to catch the perfect wave. Those are some good quotes.
What was the second one?
Anything to catch the perfect wave.
Okay. Very, very solid.
Yeah. I think Julia was liking the spacing you had sort of between your point break, kind of like really spacing those letters out and making it like pretty stylistic.
Yeah, that kerning. It's a pretty cheap way to do some branding, but it comes out really nice. I think sometimes we, as designers, maybe go a little too crazy, you know? Simple is always something that I always try to go for. Personally, when I design, I try not to over design. So sometimes simple typeface that looks really good. Don't have to get crazy with the logo mark or icon. You know. All right, so we're setting up email. Trying to keep everything here on that 8-pixel grid.
And I feel like it can take some time. Like I feel like doing it for like if you know you want to go in later and you can work on like a logo mark, you can always go back and kind of adjust that as well.
Yeah, I think for me too, it's you know, it's definitely not kind of my forte. So I always love kind of partnering and collaborating with the brand team.
Yeah.
You know, when I worked at agencies, it was a really great mix. I worked on the interactive side, so I worked really closely when we did kind of like a, you know, new marketing project that included branding and seeing how those two can kind of blend together and start to inform each other. It's always pretty cool. Let's see here, that password. It's kind of hard to see. Maybe we can throw like a little bit of a dark overlay back here.
Yeah, I think Justin in the chat was saying, could add a single layer of black with opacity to read point break better? Question
There
mark?
we go. Yeah.
That's a good suggestion, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of a go-to for me for sure is, you know, figuring out. This was the cool thing when I worked at GoPro was no shortage of just amazing imagery to kind of get in there and play around with. So this was, you know, we really tried as much as possible to, you know, keep that integrity and not, you know, mess with or tweak the image too much. So just adding that little bit of layer of opacity helped bring it out a little bit. It was really good.
Yeah, we had another question in the chat for you around which column and baseline grid system are you using?
Oh yeah, sorry. So we're using 8-pixel. Right now, so yesterday we were kind of going with like 16. I started playing around yesterday with like more of like a 24. Just gonna try to see how that feels today. Since this isn't necessarily like a social app, it's not gonna have a ton of content. It's really more about you. I was thinking maybe it would be kind of cool if it was a little bit more editorial, a little bit more white space, maybe even like a little bit more break in the line height for the copy and stuff. All right, so we got our password, email.
I mean, look at those waves. I channeled that in this t-shirt today. I do. I have my wave shirt.
You do.
You channeled blue too. We're both
did.
in the. Look at that. I blend it. Like, am I even here? Like, I don't know.
Oh, wow. That's actually
But
that's
really.
kind of amazing, actually.
Don't know if
It's
you
like
zoomed in on that on purpose in that moment, but I very much was in this.
Sometimes, you know, those happy accidents.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Yes, good wardrobe choice today.
Thank you.
Might have some wardrobe surprises later in the day. I don't want to.
We do.
Okay.
Justin's wondering, is 8-pixel the standard for grid?
I don't, you know, I think everybody has something different. It's actually what we use at Uber. So it's something I kind of feel comfortable with right now.
Yeah.
GoPro, I think we used it as well. I think it is, I hate to say standard, but
Yeah, it's hard. I feel like
maybe.
generally, yeah, to Tim's note, people use either 6, 8, or 10.
Yeah.
I feel like 8's pretty common because it's kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And I feel like more often than not, but
Yeah, it's, you know, again, I think it's kind of what you feel comfortable with, what your org uses. What's going on with this guy? Let's move this up a little bit. Let's add in a button here. Play with like 64. Huge conversation is always rounded, rectangle,
Yep.
or pill. I'm kind of a rounded guy.
Are you? Okay.
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
there were some feelings here.
No.
Yeah, what do you think?
Let us know in the chat if you guys have preference between like pill-shaped buttons or, yeah, straight edge, rectangle buttons. I feel like Adobe's language, like we have our design system, and so we have what's called Spectrum, and in that style, like we do have these pill-shaped buttons as well, and I feel like that's kind of stuff that we've been seeing a lot recently. So I definitely have been, I feel like, gravitating towards the pill-shaped button as well. I didn't mean to sass you fully on that.
That's okay. Yesterday I probably would have taken more offense to it, but now that we dress the same, that like I feel like we're good, so it's okay.
Okay. Got away with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of depends on the brand, right? It was actually, interesting. Let's try 32 maybe. It was kind of interesting. So when we did the original design system at GoPro, everything was very masculine and like hard-edged, no corner radius on anything, and it felt really good. But as the brand started to evolve and we started to kind of like shift the audience and how we were like shaping that, like we had to look into things. And now I think if you look in the app, I think they've actually converted fully to more of a rounded system. And it's funny to see how something like, even though they didn't really necessarily change the design system that we set up like, gosh, almost like 4 years ago now, just those small little iterations can totally flip it. So it's kind of nice to know that and recognize that you don't have to do like a complete overhaul to really kind of improve or change the system.
Well, and like just something as simple as the buttons makes a huge difference, right? Like stylistically and just like for the overall feel of your app. And like Sarah said in the comments, like rounded edges or square would be a nice contrast against like the wave image. So again, like kind of thinking about the rest of like the look and feel of your system and the imagery or like the feel of what you want your app to be, like then those elements can kind of also make a difference, like you're saying.
So we had one person that said I should be doing square then.
I think a lot of people in the chat are saying pill shape.
Oh, okay.
Pill shape for sure. Pill shape for the win. It's quotes.
For the win.
For the win.
For the win. I'm not hip on the. I try to keep up with my kids when they go to the abbreviations, and I get a little frustrated. I'm like, you have time. You can say the whole thing. You want to say, oh my gosh, you don't say the other part.
See, I have the issue where my mom, love you mom, wants to be, she's definitely not watching
shout
this.
out to Danielle's mom.
But she might after this. Wants to be super trendy, and so she makes up her own abbreviations. But it's so confusing because I'm like, Mom, like no one knows what those mean, so you can't just say it because I don't know what you're referring to. Yeah. Sometimes it takes it like I have to like, it's like hieroglyphics. I have to try and like figure out what she's trying to say.
Us old people, I try.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. You can ask my kids. I tried to get into a conversation one day, and I got shut down pretty quickly. They were not excited about Dad chiming in on the status of 7th grade, which I totally understand because I would have done the same thing.
Nancy was wondering, what is your strategy for grouping and organizing your layers?
Yeah, gosh, I could spend like hours on this. So, in a mobile app, it's a little bit less. When I get into the web, I get a little crazier. I actually will like go in and identify sections, and then within those sections group based on like content blocks. With mobile being a little bit smaller as far as a surface, I usually just kind of go into like the content block areas. So like, I'll start with like the background, logo, email, password, and sign-in button. Like this whole component will be one. So really just kind of like separate them as like little like larger chunks so that I can either, make alts really quickly, change out things, find them pretty quick. I I used to have a really like crazy thing where I would put the dots in there, and then that would like, ooh, that's weird. What did that do? There it goes. Oh, it goes to a Z.
Well,
can't do that. Anyway, there was like this whole like thing that I had. I've gotten away from that just because it was a little confusing, and people would get in my files and be like, it's super organized, but what are these slashes and dots and things? And, yeah.
You had your whole own language in there.
Exactly.
I think the other thing about grouping that now, like if you think through and actually organize your file, now that there's like responsive resize, like one thing that comes into play if you group nicely or like are organized about it is when you go to change from like having a mobile screen and then you go to tablet or something like that, if you group and use responsive resize, then they'll all have like relationships to each other and you might be able to then have a more responsive design.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and all this stuff just helps, like, again, in the long term, right? I've worked with different types of people that are like super, into it right at the beginning, and some are more just like, I just need to be creative and go and get my ideas out. I think that's this is like my solution is like this low fidelity version is where I can just just go and don't worry about layers and groupings because it's just whatever. And then when I get into here, I feel like I have a better direction so that I can do both at the same time. But really it's just everybody's their own individual with how that happens and what makes the most sense. But yeah, so let's see. Let me move this up a little bit so we can get... It's always weird, when you're playing with like imagery in the back, you got to play around with how bright it is. Maybe you can find exactly... Kind of cool when you can find an image in the background that actually works really well with where you're putting stuff. So playing around with that a lot. What was the copy? We'll sign up copy for all those new users out there. So how's that looking? What are we thinking here? There we go. Got moved around. Nice. Looking pretty good. I'm digging it. We can get that surfer up a little bit.
So Tim has a question around when does a background become too busy for the text and how would you deal with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, obviously your primary focus is usability. So, at all costs you want to be able to find, the form fields in this instance much more than have this nice like graphic in the background. I think it's go on feel, obviously crits, asking people, getting some feedback, usability testing is always great. That's why I try to look for images that are aid into where the content is going. Again, the logo and stuff is important, but if it's a little bit skewed, you don't completely read it, probably not the biggest deal. Really our primary focus is this area, the email, password, sign-in area. So as long as that isn't being distracted or taken away from, I think you're in a good spot.
JC says, looking good. Rianne, thanks for joining us.
All right, cool. Cool, so we got this set up. Let's take a look at our layers here. See how we're looking. Splash. Pure. Bring that into the logo. Background image. So this is our black overlay at 20. I like kind of being descriptive in my layers. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Again, I not so much for myself, but anybody else that's jumping into my file, rather than having to hunt and peck for information. The more that I can give them, I always feel the better. It also kind of helps me in my thinking as I'm these little triggers that I've learned over the years. It's like if you actually say black opacity overlay at 20%. It kind of registers a little bit more. So if you needed to use it again down the road, you don't all of a sudden do 30% or 15%. You're kind of making those almost like design system notes in your head, which is super helpful. Now we can group all this good stuff here. Cool. All right. Nice. So this is feeling pretty good. Probably take this over now. Now you start to kind of actually work through each state. So in here, we can actually, since this layout's looking pretty good, we can actually just copy. I usually kind of copy, paste, and I'll actually bring it back into our systems board. And let's see, I'll just drop it in here for a second, and then I'll start working let's get rid of the buttons for right now.
Cool, yeah, and I just want to show one quick thing on my screen around, we've talked about having an image and then when it's hard to kind of decide if it fits well, you're trying to design on top of it and figure out that spacing. So I just went to Adobe Stock and, I typed in surfing because that's the general theme of today.
Nice.
But it's trying, and you look and you start to find, try and find images that you might want to use. One cool thing is that you can save an image to your library, so you don't have to actually purchase it or anything yet, but just to preview basically. So I saved it to my library. I have it in this stream library right now. So when I go into XD, I have my Creative Cloud libraries open, and so it automatically pulls it in there. So I can pull in this image, and it has the watermark and everything, but at least I can start to play around and see if it would work. And if it doesn't, then I can go in and grab a different image, save it to my library, and then come on over here, sync it, and test out another one. And then if I do end up liking it, because the issue I feel is I don't want to buy an image or something like that and then go through the entire design and then realize it's not going to work, right? So
the worst thing
that's
ever.
awful. So right now it has the watermark. If I once, I can go through and actually design and see if it feels right. And then if I actually do like it, then I can from here just purchase it and then continue using everything, and it's already in my designs. So I don't have to kind of go back and forth and re-download the image and create the artwork again, which is really nice, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a little work stream that happens with Adobe Stock. It's one option of doing stuff with images. There's a ton of different places to grab images as well, though.
Super helpful. I think this is one of the cool things about just Adobe in general is just how well everything all just kind of works together. It's so nice, just even taking stuff over from we were doing yesterday, icons from Illustrator, and just everything plays so nicely together. Super helpful. Cool. So looking just to set up kind of, now that we kind of have a good idea of where this form field is going, and starting to play around and then actually make it a component, so that way we can keep it consistent throughout the designs, wherever we might use it next.
Nice, yeah. And Masha, to answer your question on the chat, does download preview also work that way? Downloading preview will download the image with the stock imagery on top of it to your desktop, so you can download it to your desktop. Saving it to a library just is using it within the Creative Cloud, so it's easy, you don't have the hard file, but you can download it to preview it as well. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. We are at that time. I know. Time
goes
flies
so
by. People are already getting ready. They know what time it is in the chat. It's time to win some stickers. So this is the chat and win portion. So make sure that you're heading on over into the Behance chat if you're not there already, and get ready for chat and win.
Drum roll. So I'm your host, Danielle.
And I'm Charlie Waite. Thank you for joining us in today's portion of Chat and Win. We're now twinsies. This has happened.
This is twinsies.
Yeah.
Happened totally by accident.
I mean, slightly accident, slightly not. I brought my
Yeah.
hat today, and then these glasses were borrowed because
That's
apparently
true.
we looked enough like twins to make this happen.
Yeah. Brother, sister.
Yeah.
Looking good.
Yeah. I mean, close. We both have Ruka hats on.
Yeah, the fact that you had that and that was just something you could come to the table with today was pretty impressive.
I feel like I had to commit to it. Yeah. And I mean, I wore my socks, my like stance socks that have like some surf stuff on them and some palm trees and things.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like I very often show my socks off on this stream, and I really shouldn't.
Socks are amazing.
Yeah.
I love socks. I think in 7th or 8th grade, I did some sort of like talent show thing, and they asked me a question, and it was like, if I could wear a new pair of socks every day, that would like be success to me. It's like nothing.
So random.
But there's nothing better than a new pair of socks.
I
on
mean,
your
it's
feet.
true. They do feel really great.
It's
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah. It makes a difference. I feel like people forget about their feet, and then, oh, the side tangents of that. Congratulations to our winner today. We have Eduardo. Eduardo said nice socks. Thank you, and congratulations.
Eduardo,
for
you already
winning
won. You don't have to
these
butter it out.
Oh, snap. You have won Sticker Mule stickers, so congratulations. And for those of you who didn't win today, we will still give you this code that you can use, and you can go and grab some Sticker Mule stickers as well. So there's a good deal on that. So make sure you use the code and check it out. Congratulations, Eduardo. Someone will be DMing you on Behance to let you know how you can claim your prize for today.
You're not gonna stay over there?
I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, so I am now going to be designing the rest of this.
Design
How would
system.
you feel if I like drove
get in
in
there.
your files? Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
It
All right,
feels
we'll
like
switch
dirty. Yeah.
All right, back to our normal role. What were we doing? Just design systems, surf apps. I feel like
Point Break. Oh
I feel
yeah,
like we
Point
haven't
Break.
talked about.
I know.
Keanu
Okay,
Reeves
yeah.
enough.
Let's cue this up while
Okay.
we're designing.
All right.
So yesterday, Point Break, we asked you guys on the chat what we should name the app. We got a lot of great suggestions, but Point Break came up, and
Yes.
you were immediately drawn to Point Break as the name.
I mean, it's right there with like Karate Kid, Back to the Future.
Uh-huh.
I mean, this is like childhood. Rad, if you know Rad.
I don't.
We need to do a
Oh
whole
no!
nother.
I did so much homework. You're gonna give me so much more homework.
I'm
And
coming
we're gonna
back
get
tomorrow,
work
and
done.
we're doing Adobe
Okay.
movie critique.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know how I have many dreams, and
That's right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
And one of my dreams was to be a game show host. Anyway, so I
Ooh.
came up with some movie fun fact trivia
Yes.
based off of Point Break. So we'll see if anyone in the chat, if any of you guys have seen Point Break before. I hadn't seen it before last night, but
Crying
did my
shame.
homework, rented it, watched it. Not from Blockbuster via your suggestion.
I'm
but
telling you,
thank
it's
you
a
for
good
the
place.
sass on that. Yeah. Okay, but I want to see if you can get these right and on the chat as well. I only have two because it was late. 'Cause I had to watch the movie. Okay.
Yeah.
The movie went through several titles before landing on Point Break. Which of the following was not one of those titles?
Okay.
Okay. A. Riders on the Storm. B. Over the Falls. And C. Johnny Utah.
All right. Which one was not?
Which of the following was not one of those titles?
Johnny Utah. Even though that's his name, that would have been a terrible movie title.
As you put in Johnny Utah at FBI.com.
I mean, that is his name.
It is his
He
name,
worked
yeah.
for the FBI. What was the second one?
The second one was Over the Falls.
Oh, I could see 90s people getting really excited. I'm going to go Johnny Utah. That seems like a terrible movie name.
Okay, and Tim said C. It's always C.
It's always C.
JC says Riders on the Storm.
It's always C.
Actually, it is B. Over the Falls.
Oh,
I made that one
man.
up. Yeah.
Nice job.
Thank
though.
you.
That was like right in there.
Thank you. It took me a while to come up with the ones that weren't real. But yeah, can you put Johnny? So Johnny Utah was the first one that they were going to name the movie after basically his name, Johnny Utah.
Yeah.
And then they changed it
Nobody
to
would've
Riders
seen
on the
that.
Storm. And then they were like, let's go with Point Break.
I remember Riders on the Storm, also a great Doors song. Yeah, the Doors, the band. Oh, goodness.
We're just, I'm like, I feel like I don't
Thanks for
deserve to
joining
be
us
twins
today.
anymore. Oh, and that was it. Oh, that was it. That was it right there.
All right.
But getting back to the stream, and then we'll come back to the second question here. Nate had a question.
Yep.
Basically saying sometimes they end up with too much white colors, too much white, and in their UI design, how can they tackle that?
Too much white in their design. I'm curious if that's like white space or if that's like the use of white. So like types of white, icons white, like on a dark background. White space, I'm a huge fan. I love it. And I think, it should be used more like in some appropriate places, and in some places it just doesn't make sense. I think it really depends on the design. I think it, if you're feeling like there's too much white overall, you can obviously, tighten up the spacing a little bit, add in some, I think color's a bit of a crutch. So just adding in color just for the sake of color. Make sure the color means something, whether that's black or, a blue or something. But I don't know. That's a tough one because I'm not, without seeing it, it's hard to say I love white space.
Yeah, I think less is more a lot of the times, and so I feel like keeping it simple, and you can always add more, but kind of keeping that base and making sure you can always start when you start with that low fidelity, I feel like you can get a good sense as well of just the necessary items of what you need and the necessary text and kind of the spacing, and you can really hone in design even on that. And then when you go to the next level of the visual design, you can start adding a little bit more flair and flavor, but still keeping it simple.
Yeah.
So and he clarified white color background.
Ooh, white color background. Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of work with background and white. You can always use a horizontal rule line for separators to kind of help with the hierarchy. It's actually kind of counterintuitive sometimes. I think even if you have a white background, you could actually utilize white space even better to make those separations. Also, it kind of depends on. See Norvell, who doesn't love white space.
Yeah.
It also kind of depends on the surface you're designing on, right? Mobile, web, TV. I think all these things you kind of have to take into account, and I also think take into account what the product's trying to do and what the feature's trying to do. Something that's more editorial, like the New York Times or something, could get away, or Medium could get away with a ton of white space, right? Yeah. If you're designing something that's really complex, like a data tool, just having kind of crazy amounts of white space probably isn't exactly what you're doing because your users don't necessarily need that. So kind of take that into consideration.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Plus, I think when you're designing, like you said, if there's content that you really want to speak for itself, like photography or something like that, when you have all that, you kind of want it to shine on its own. So sometimes having a white or off black background that's just really plain and simple, so that the content speaks for itself, makes a lot of sense versus trying to create too much noise and visually you don't know where to look. So I think a lot of people in the chat are kind of saying the same thing. White's not always a bad thing. Who doesn't love white space and that negative space? So yeah.
Yeah, you gotta love that white space. I think that was a big turning point early in my career. Was the spacing, hierarchy, and just overall layout, and just being comfortable, kind of exploring different things. And I think that was when I started to really understand what I was doing. Actually, there was purpose to every little decision I was making, and I think people sometimes don't really take into consideration how much you can achieve with just like the hierarchy and utilizing the negative space or the white space and how you do the layout. Provides a much cleaner UX and really can help kind of tell that story a little bit better.
Totally, yeah. Great questions. Keep them coming in the chat. We're here to answer any questions you guys have.
Realized I didn't have a like air state color yesterday, so I'm just adding that to the palette, adding it to our assets, and then you can kind of come over here, go back into the assets and update. Look at that. It's there for us. Perfect.
Yes.
Johnny Utah was the wrong username and password. There's some like descriptive text. So are we done with our game of questions, or are you kind of holding out?
You want one more? I mean, I have one. I have one more. Yeah, you're like, is that it?
Is that it?
No,
well, I
have
lost
another
too,
one.
so I need to kind of rebound.
It's true. You do need to redeem yourself. I figured I'd give you a little bit of time.
Oh,
Reboot,
yeah.
and then we'll
Get that
come in strong for the last one. Yeah.
Set the steam back up to an acceptable place. Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Life coach.
Whatever. Do you have any design books that you always recommend others to read? Is a question we just got in the chat.
I hate when I get questions about books because I'm a terrible reader.
I have a podcast. I feel like, like there's podcasts, there's books. I mean, same, well, not always.
Yeah. I'm kind of a sucker for Medium, to be honest with you. I've been really fortunate, like, to meet a lot of awesome people over the years at conferences and things. And so, I've made really good friends with people like Mark Hemian, who's awesome. And I think he's got some really great words of wisdom just on design from an interesting angle. He comes from more like an artist background. My buddy Joel Buchelman used to do a really cool podcast about balance, which I think is a huge thing in our industry, figuring out. It's funny because I think we all love to be creative and love to be designers, but at the same time, it's like you do need to not sit in front of the computer all the time.
Yeah.
Get outside, go surfing, go do whatever. So that's super interesting. What are you listening to?
I'm trying to think of what the exact. I don't want to get the names wrong.
I know. That's why I went with the two safe ones.
I like the How I Built This with NPR's How I Built This.
That one's super good.
Yeah, and kind of goes into all of like innovators, entrepreneurs, like all of like their journeys of how they like actually ended up making the things that they did. Like
I think I listened to the one with the Dyson guy, the Dyson vacuum maybe.
Oh, okay.
Is on that one?
I haven't heard that one yet. It's probably like queued up.
Yeah. It was super interesting, and it's a vacuum, which you wouldn't think, but the story was really compelling.
Oh, is it this one? This one?
Yeah,
vacuum
yeah.
one. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was really interesting.
Yeah, they're super interesting. I just feel like there's a lot of names and like brands and companies and things that it's kind of interesting just to hear their story and their journey of how they ended up. The other one is Wireframe, which is like more specific to design. And a good friend, Coy, worked on this one. And so this one is also just like an interesting one to listen to as well.
Nice.
They talk about the whole Hawaii, when there was the fear that it was like the mistake that they claimed that there was like a missile that was going to come, right?
Yeah,
and that whole thing. And it's
yeah.
basically like one of the episodes goes through how like it was a big design error. Like how could you have a system where you can accidentally hit a button, right, that sends out a notification to people that like that's going to happen, right? So it kind of is really interesting from the design side of like what does that system actually look like? And like was it user error or was it a design system and an experience that was poorly built?
Yeah.
Probably the latter. It was the latter.
It's still crazy to think that actually happened. It's I don't know. Like just thinking back, I had friends that live over there, and I remember just thinking. I mean, it took almost 30 minutes to even get any
you should
confirmation.
Even if you hit that button, like in an experience, there should probably be like a confirmation modal that comes up where it's like, are you sure you want to do this? Like I'm like nerding out design wise, but like really, like that should probably be a thing.
It's like somehow, like when I try to delete a photo off my phone, it has better security than sending out
Yeah.
an earth-shattering message like that. That's
Yeah.
probably not good.
Yeah, let us know. Yeah, we had some other suggestions coming in as well. Let us know in the chat if you guys have any book or podcast suggestions for each other and for us that you think would be interesting. We had refactoring UI was a suggestion that Nahid is currently reading.
Okay. Nice.
Cool. And I also will point out that we have about 45 minutes just under until we do the Adobe XD Creative Daily Challenge. And so we'll be taking a look at any submissions that you have for today. And so I do have up the screen of where you can get a sense of how it works and like how to go through and unlock today's challenge. That's on behance.net/challenge/XD. And today's is around drag gesture. So we will be taking a look at what you guys submit. We can give you guys some feedback later on in the stream. So make sure that you're working on those and sending them through Discord.
I feel like time is like flying by today.
Yeah.
Yesterday was like...
Time flies when you're having fun with your twinsy.
Twinsies. It's good to see you, sis.
Yay. Back at you, bro.
Oh, I see what you did. All right, cool. So I'm just taking some of the things that we made on the splash page and actually trying to make them into components so that we can use them down the road. Realize that, in some of these states, we'll probably actually, let's make these guys, make sure they got added down here. They are, so we can go over here. So in this state, obviously, we probably wouldn't have this full white button because you can't touch it yet. So, let's get rid of it. Go grab it from here. There we go. Then we can bump up the opacity and play with that whole thing kind of to the point earlier. What works with the image, what doesn't work with the image. Looks pretty good. Maybe go back over here, change that, save it. Cool. Interest of time, maybe we can just jump into the home feed. What do we got? Oh, the countdown timer. Think you can do it today? Point to it. First shot.
Oh, my hands got cut off, but yes, I can.
No, I couldn't do it.
You did it in the wrong
No,
direction.
Yeah.
I had to think. Well, you pointing out that helped me to get it right.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Yeah.
So I went back in yesterday. I wasn't loving the layout of the cards that we ended up with yesterday. Thought the content we had was good, but just the overall structure seemed a little weird. And then even this morning felt like there might be a little too much emphasis on this header area. So I don't necessarily always go back and change wires. I don't know if it's worth the time unless I'm still kind of thinking through things in my head. I feel like it's got a pretty good foundation, so I'd probably just jump into more of the visual approach and kind of keep going. We can do like 8 pixel radius. See how that goes. But maybe playing with a little bit more of an inset kind of look.
Nice. Nahid's wondering, are you on social? He wants to follow.
Social.
Twitter,
I'm on Twitter at Charlie C. Waite.
Oh, yeah. Tim sent it through.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Thanks, Tim. And same for Instagram.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah. If you want to see pictures of me surfing and my kids.
Yeah.
Not much
right?
not much design stuff going on there. But yeah.
And for those for Brienne's wondering sort of what else is on cue for today's stream. So Charlie's going to continue going through, and he'll be working in Adobe XD Live and designing out the visual system here. And then we also are going to be, I assume we'll get to the avatars. So we'll be looking at so much Keanu Reeves.
See, this is how I know we're brother and sisters because I was just about to go into avatars.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so that's going to happen. And yes, to Tim's point on the chat, more Keanu Reeves trivia. Definitely have another piece of trivia happening soon.
Yeah. Hey. Let me get in here just because since we're talking about it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where's Johnny? There's Johnny. Look at that.
Wow. And now I get the reference because I actually watched the movie last night.
And it's the best like opening scene. And now when somebody sends you that GIF, you're just gonna know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I looked at, I went down a rabbit hole, I told you. Keanu Reeves last night. It's like never been such a thing, but now
it's totally a thing. I mean, he's pretty awesome. I mean, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Oh, this is getting sad. this is. There was a voice in my head that said not to mention the movie because there's no chance, but they're making a new one.
Tell me more. Wait, what?
Bill and Ted's. I can't tell you anything about Bill and Ted's. It's a journey you have to take solo.
Is Keanu in it?
Oh yes, Keanu. Okay. I think that was his first.
Was it before?
First big break.
Point Break.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is like. Okay. He looked like he was in high school.
Point Break was the earliest. Keanu looks so young.
Yes.
In that movie, because I told you Speed was like I loved Speed, but that was good. Point Break was 91, I think. So.
God, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Time flies with good movies. Let's see. We made some avatars yesterday. It's components. Drop them in. Oh, and he's already there.
Oh, Keanu.
It's just awesome, isn't it? Gonna be designing the full Keanu UI kit.
It's like very interesting timing too, because yesterday we talked about. I feel like this is just an ad for Keanu. Like, what has happened here? But we were talking about.
Kind of waiting for him to walk through the door at this point.
Amazing. Basically, Matrix is coming out in 2020.
Oh, yeah.
And then, which is odd because I read that last night. And then I wanted to watch John Wick. I was telling you the third one, which I still haven't seen. And
I know, I kind of feel
and it's coming out on digital like tomorrow or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, perfect timing. That's what I'm doing with my weekend.
It's a good weekend. I mean,
I'm stoked for it. Yeah.
Obviously, I'm a huge movie fan. I don't know really when that happened. I think so. I went to college. I'm from Newport Beach. Mm-hmm. I went to college in Mississippi. Have you been to Mississippi?
I haven't.
It's really not much to do.
Okay.
I went there. I played baseball there, but a lot of the time after, downtime, it's like watching movies. And we just like a couple of guys that I went to school with that we were in the same dorm from California as well. So it's just
do you watch TV, like when you design, do you multitask? Like, do you listen to music or do you, like, what's your setup?
Yeah.
Do you watch TV? Can you watch TV when you design?
So I do. I try to watch stuff that I've watched before.
I'm totally the same. Yeah.
I can't design and watch or listen to music. My brain just kind of like goes off. I forget what I'm doing. Like it doesn't keep me like that rhythm that I need. So podcasts work really well for me. And then like TV shows are actually the best. When I'm really trying to like jam through stuff, if I've kind of watched a TV show or like a series before, I'll just like rewatch it.
Do you have one that you typically watch in the background?
Gosh. I don't know if I can say them out in public.
Oh, ooh, okay.
I mean, no, like they're just like embarrassing. Some good ones. Friday Night Lights.
Okay, I've heard of it. Oh my gosh. God. The stress. I'm like, actually, don't tell me because if I haven't heard of it, I know I'm gonna get a hard time.
Have you heard of Netflix?
What? Yeah. What are we talking about?
Streaming.
Wow. Thank you. Mine's The Office. I watch The Office all the time on replay in the background, but it's the same thing because it's mindless. It's like you don't really have to pay attention, but you're kind of consuming it. But yeah, I can't watch new things.
Yeah, because then you end up just like watching it.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. I haven't really talked to too many people that are like that. Every time I'm doing that, and like my wife is in the same room and she's doing some work or something, I always look over and she's like stopped working and totally engaged with what's on TV, and she's like, I don't know how you do this. This is crazy.
Yeah, Alex in the chat says, I like listening to music while designing. Helps me relax and focus on the task.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like everyone definitely has a certain setup, like physically and just like what they like do while they're actually watching. Yes, Justin, Parks and Rec. Also,
Oh, that's a good one.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I know, and there's so much TV out now, too, where it's like you can...
Yeah, I
design
consume way too
forever.
much TV. Don't know where my time goes.
Alright. Alright, this is kind of cool. Let's get in here. What's our text up here? How much time we got? 34 minutes. Alright. Stop talking about Kiana. We gotta design stuff.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh, wait, did we ever get back into the trivia? We didn't get back into the trivia. We went off on another tangent, didn't we?
All right, you want your last trivia? Let's do it.
Oh, there's only one more. I see it. So you're saving it. Okay.
No, like now's the time. Ready?
Now's the time.
Okay. All right. Point Break trivia. For $1 million. No, okay. Keanu Reeves wasn't the first choice to play
Ooh.
Johnny Utah. Shocker. The producers wanted other actors for the role. Which of these actors was not wanted by producers?
All right.
A. Tom Cruise. B. Johnny Depp. C. Charlie Sheen.
Oh, it's got to be Tom Cruise.
I like it. Also, Tim says C every time. He's like, it's always C. Just like in the chat, he's like C.
Yeah.
It's always answer C.
I don't know if that's sound advice, Tim. I think I tried to do that. I got like a 640 on my SATs. Just all C's. It was not good.
All right, you're going with
I'm going Tom
A,
Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, because Johnny Depp would have been good in that role.
Is that your
That's
final answer?
Can I phone a friend?
You can phone a chat person.
What do you guys
Although
think?
they're gonna.
Charlie Sheen. Yeah, but Charlie Sheen back then would have been an okay pick. Okay, I'll go with.
Are you going with your gut?
I'm going with Tom Cruise. Sorry.
That is correct. Good call. Yeah, I had to try and figure out who would be around the same age. My issue is I don't know actors super well.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you redeemed yourself and you've won $1 million. The Adobe live stream team will hook you up on that, not me. I'm not responsible for that.
Where do I send the invoice to?
Paco? Yeah? No? Okay. He's like, shoot.
Paco's not listening to us.
No, he could care less.
Yeah, not cool. All right, so we'll add like wave height.
T. Cruz, yep. Yeah, for this, we had a question in the chat, sort of what we're building here. Charlie is in Adobe XD, and he's designing a surf app right now, and we've been talking through a bit of design systems. You can see he has this, the whole assets panel is really like helped to talk through components and character styles and like color system that you might have. And so he has sort of two working files right now, one with this larger design system and then the file he's in right now, which he's been going through the different screens for the app Point Break.
Yes. Yeah, and right now just kind of iterating off of, you know, some of the work that we were doing yesterday, kind of touching on what you said, you know, started in the chicken scratch world with, you know, the hand-drawn stuff and just throwing away some ideas, kind of getting a good base, and then yesterday kind of flushing it out, and now kind of coming in and really kind of locking in some of the work. What are we thinking color palette in the chat room? Some colors in here that's resonating with people a little bit more than others. I've kind of gone back and forth. Something cool about that color. Gold? Not golden. Alright.
Like that sort of seafoam, green, teal.
It's kind of cool, right? Something different. It's funny, like, one of the things I loved working at a design agency, I used to work at Focus Lab, and it was like in any given week I'd work within like 3 or 4 different, like, completely different brands. So color palette was always different,
Wow.
imagery was always different, but it was so refreshing, you know. there's something nice about working in one brand consistently, but I do kind of miss that every once in a while, just jumping in and like, I notice now sometimes when I do like a freelance project or something, it like takes a minute for me to like get away from the Uber color palette. Or
I was gonna ask if you work on like side projects or like have your own things that kind of keep you motivated outside of like the design projects you work on for Uber.
Yeah, I don't do a ton anymore, just because, you know, obviously the day jobs keeps you pretty busy and then 3 kids. But I do every once in a while, you know, there's, like we talked about earlier, you know, you meet a lot of people doing some really cool stuff. So yeah, something kind of cool comes up and doesn't kind of conflict in the world that I'm working with, I'm definitely into it. I think it's fun, you know, you kind of can get out and learn some stuff. And it's always good to have a couple different things you're working on.
Yeah. Brienne said, I like that pink color. So we had some people getting back to you on the chat.
Cool.
The mustard.
Pink's kind of cool. I wonder if we could set up like maybe we could set up some sort of system for like good, bad, and great. So if it's like really good, maybe we're some like a mustard color. It'd be kind of fun to just like define that. Places that aren't so good, maybe. Although I do like that pink color. I was also thinking, instead of like illustration like icons, like what if we just went straight emoji? So some of the premise from this yesterday and like why I wanted to even build something like this was because right now a lot of this stuff handles in like group text with me and my friends. It's like, oh, where are you surfing this morning? Where are you going later? What are you doing this weekend? That type of stuff. So kind of keeping some of that feel in there. And so it doesn't feel like something that you're totally committing to. I think that would be my fear is like, you know, it's hard to keep things not feeling like a social app these days, especially when you start doing like feeds and cards and whatnot. So maybe just playing with that might be kind of fun. Although the emojis they kind of render weird in text or in here. Like the bounding boxes and stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like on the pushed over on the left side there.
Yeah, and it doesn't like the baseline's all funny.
Yeah. Talking about in the chat sort of some questions around the screen size that you're working with and just sort of if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so on this one I'm working on the iOS 10, not the Max. I think it, you know, depends, again, it's kind of, all these questions are super great and it really depends on the, you know, the company you're working for, where your users spend the most time. That's usually where I start. And then, you know, you mentioned like the responsive like layouts and things like that. Then we kind of go back and tweak where things need to be tweaked. Also super helpful to, you know, really work closely with your engineering team. Because when you work great with them, you have to do way less design. You can start to iterate and see things live on devices, and then you can kind of even like design on the fly a little bit. That's kind of the way I like to do it. So you're not just making hundreds and hundreds of artboards of different sizes. I think we're moving into a world where there's certain breakpoints you need to account for sure. But designing, I mean, try to design for every Android phone would be a little bit crazy.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, and it's super dependent, I feel like, on your engineering team, like what their preferences are, how they like to work, how you guys work best together. And at least the nice thing in XD is that the artboard tool, when you do select it and you go to create an artboard, it has like the preset of like the different screen sizes, so you don't have to go look those up. You can just choose like if you want like iPhone X or iPhone X Max or Android and iPad, and it has all the standard sizes already. So versus having to like go over to Google and kind of be like, what is that screen size again?
Yeah, exactly. All right, call us today.
And then Hale's wondering, do you find it easier to design a wireframe first or just dive right in?
Yeah, so we touched this a little bit yesterday. For me, my flow is definitely, the whiteboard into maybe like a notebook, or I actually really like drawing on the iPad. We talked about me being kind of quasi-remote, living down south, but flying up here. So I use the iPad as kind of this portable whiteboard, which is super helpful. So kind of get into this world, and then I go into wires, and that I'm just kind of honing in every time, right? Like flushing through ideas really quickly, not getting attached to anything, kind of moving through quickly. And then when I feel like it's in a really good spot, that's when I get into more of like the visual breakdown and the layout. And it feels like I've done a lot of the work without ever like wasting time.
Yeah.
But we did talk about yesterday, maybe like, there are some things that you can set up from like a system standpoint. I think yesterday when we started, we kind of had this type ramp that can always be modified, but at least you can have a good starting point. So if you wanted to come back in here and change to a different font because you're not feeling this one, having some color palette options and ideas is always great. And then as you start to go through each screen, you start to realize like, oh, okay, we can build out the form fields, I can build out the navigation and things like that as you're kind of checking the boxes.
Yeah, and that'll help you get started pretty quickly with some of the elements if you already have them from a design system.
Yeah. Let's make this a little bit longer so we can see the whole thing. Thank you for the tip, XD. The one cool thing I love about XD too is like when you get away and actually like drag out, it still shows you kind of the like the cutoff.
Yeah.
Which is super great on, I mean, it's great on all surfaces. I think web is super helpful for when you're talking about above and below the fold. But even here, if you wanted to come in and, bring in the navigation, you can drop it in right there on top. Leave it there. Gets a good understanding of where it is.
Yeah, and then once you get into so right now Charlie's been working in solely the design mode of Adobe XD, but there's also the prototyping mode in the top corner. So when you do get into actually prototyping this out, you can actually start to like have things scroll or have fixed elements, and it really starts to bring it to life and start to think through some of the interactions of the app. And it's really pretty simple to do that, but it makes a big difference versus just having static mocks, to be able to kind of like see how the design actually feels and bring that to someone and convince them that like this is the way to go, or just what your vision for it is and communicating that.
I think it's a great way to do like a little bit of a gut check too. I find that when something's in a flow, you realize like things that you overlooked. Like we were talking about earlier with crazy use case, but like where's that, confirmation screen that you might not like remember for whatever when you're doing your layout, and then you get into a flow and you hit that button and you're like, oh, that feels weird. Like I should have added this, and you can go back and design. So I think it works really great for that as well.
Yeah, definitely figuring out if you have any flows that are missing. I feel like eventually like I'll go and start to hook things up, and as I click through, I'm like, oh, shoot, like this doesn't make sense to go straight to this screen. Like there should be some interstitial or something. It helps, with that for sure.
I think I had some other good Patrick Swayze.
Oh, so necessary. Yeah.
Huh? Look at that hair. It's pretty solid.
What a good movie. It was such a good movie.
It's really good. I know. I tweeted the other day that I was like, I even said it to you before you watched it, but it's basically Fast and the Furious, but surfing. And I never realized it, but my son wanted to watch Fast and Furious the other day, so we were watching. I'm like, just basically they just stole Point Break and then made $1 trillion off of 9 movies.
No, literally, when people saw it, because I had posted a story that I was, obviously my homework was to watch Point Break post yesterday's stream. And so when I did, people were like, oh, like great movie or blah, blah, and people were like, did you know that that's basically Fast and the Furious? I was like, oh my gosh, like that's exactly what Charlie told me.
I know. I felt so dumb. Like, again, just not realizing that it was the exact same. Like, oh man. Bring some of these things in here with like some different colors. So I think, we were talking about yesterday, identifying maybe like a couple different components for the feed. One with an image, one that's a little bit more kind of like journally and just text and kind of like a reminder. So just kind of making those two right now. And then I'll probably just make that into like a repick grid and then kind of blow it out and kind of move on to something else.
Nice.
So you gonna go to the ocean this weekend?
Oh, am I? No.
No.
I might go to Hawaii in a couple weeks, and then I'm like,
nice.
man, I should really get over my fear of the ocean, and maybe get in the water. Yeah.
It's just such a good place.
I think it's about time. I feel like I've been mentally prepping for 15 years to get back in, so might happen. Yeah. Just 15 years casually. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's no big deal. I mean, look at Johnny Utah, right?
It was inspiration.
I'm just
It did
saying.
inspire me to think about getting in the ocean.
Just saying. He's
Yeah.
a guy.
Yeah.
Knew nothing about surfing.
It's true. My friends really want to go skydiving, and I told them, I was like, I think I really need to watch like a go with that look. Yeah. I have a fear of heights, so and just like
You're going on like a
some questionable
Point
things.
Break vacation.
Oh, I'm like, yeah.
That's essentially what you're gonna do. You're gonna.
I'm actually going. You
Surf?
should watch my film. I'm making my own version
Why
of
not?
Fast and the Furious /
Why
Point
not?
Break. Yeah.
Go for a surf.
Real janky version of it.
Jump out of a
Yeah.
jump out of a plane. Maybe rob a bank. I don't know. I mean, if you're gonna be true to the.
I didn't say it. No. So bad. Really bringing down my reputation on this stream.
I don't know. I think I'm getting you more followers, to be honest with you. Let's see.
I really don't think so. Do it. Skydiving is
Choppa.
amazing. That's what Justin said. I don't know.
Have
you done it
no.
before?
That's the one thing. I'm with you on the heights thing.
Yeah.
I see no reason to jump out of a perfectly good functioning airplane. If it was going down, I'm happy to do it then. But yeah. So just playing with the padding a little bit, seeing what works, what doesn't work. It's probably good. Cool. All right. What else working on here? All right, how are we feeling about this? I need to drop an image in here, maybe.
I love the with the emoji, the shotgun emoji.
It's kind of
I think
fun,
that's great.
right?
It's really fun. Yeah.
The emojis adds like a different. See, this is where I go a little bit crazy as just a personal thing. Like I'll just keep going back and fudging with stuff, like over and over, until it feels good. So, apologize for that, but.
I feel like a lot of designers are that way. It's hard to tell when you know when to be done, when something is
Yeah.
good to go.
We got a little double groupy here. Oops. All right, cool. Yeah, and then let's see, we brought out some other ones too. Should probably added those first, but it's all right.
Ooh, nice.
It's so cheesy, but it's just so good.
It's like the playful little details, like we talked about when we were looking at
That's right.
people's,
Yeah.
reviewing people's work yesterday. We talked about like these little moments of delight,
Yeah.
like whether it's in like a little mini micro interaction, or like fun little animation, or it's in like these little like fun emojis or something playful, or just like a moment of surprise and delight. Like it makes a big difference, I feel like, in your experience in like the app.
Yeah, and I think, especially when you're building products today, it's like those little things is what keeps people coming back. There's so many things out there that, if you wanted like a to-do list, right? How many to-do lists are there on the App Store?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, the features are all the same, but like these little moments of delight are, like you said, either what keeps you coming back or what just makes it enjoyable when we saw some great ones yesterday, right? For the, some of those like check mark animations.
Yep.
Super awesome.
Yeah, and so on that note, we have about just under 15 minutes until we'll go into the design feedback portion. The countdown is to that side. Did you see that? So good.
Did I do it right? Oh,
Oh, no.
I did that on purpose.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, come on. But yeah, so make sure that you're starting to wrap those up or send those through Discord. We'll be taking a look and giving feedback on those soon.
All right, I'm gonna try your recommendation earlier. So it's how to surf pick here. What looks realistic? That looks like Johnny Utah this morning. All right, so save to my library. Walk me through this one, Danielle, because I haven't done this one yet.
You'll go into your file, OpenCC libraries.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Cool. And then I can just drag it.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Ooh, nice.
Look at that.
I was
going to
say that color scheme, like, wow.
That just, wow.
It's like you planned that, but
It
you
is
really
like I
didn't. Like,
planned
that's
that,
crazy.
huh?
Yeah.
That worked out good. I like that. Super helpful, right? Again, we were talking about it like a lot yesterday, just all these little tricks to help improve that workflow. And, I remember like early days, you'd go into find an image and you end up spending like 4 hours in Google Images. And then next thing you know, you're watching a TV show or something. You're like,
I remember being like, the intern job is just like go find stock imagery, right?
oh,
It's like
wow.
a big thing.
That's an intern job?
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Right, yeah. But it would take so long, right? It was
Yeah,
like one of
yeah,
those
yeah.
really tedious tasks of just like going and finding the right stock imagery.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll just make something up. We'll call it low tide. Maybe we can add some icons. I think I brought some over in here too. I don't think Hillary's on today, so she's not gonna be able to help us find the icons. Maybe she can. Let's see what we got over here.
Who on the chat can find the icon you're looking for first?
We're definitely not gonna find a low tide one, so we're just gonna put some like placeholder stuff in here for the sense of time. But
Justin in the chat says he's digging the mustard. Reminds him of the sunrise.
yeah. Oh, see, that would be pretty cool. So like maybe our theme is kind of that early morning. You get the mustard. Midday, it's a little bit more blue.
Yeah.
Evening, we start getting a little bit darker.
Yeah, just based off of time of day. I like that.
That could be kind of cool. Joshua Lee. I know Joshua.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, he might
Hi,
he might
Joshua.
actually work on my team at Uber. Joshua, get back to work, please. His intern job was making coffee.
And being a delivery boy.
That's like more of since our movie theme is going so well.
It is a classic, like what you would have the idea of what an intern, would do.
That's kind of the but even in like that industry, right? Like that's kind of what you always hear.
Yeah.
How much you wanted to be a director, but all I did was get coffee. What else we got? 10 minutes. Finish an app.
No pressure.
No pressure. That kind of looks like a wave, so we'll use that one.
Nice.
Looks like something. Stocks.
Joshua, GG, gotta go. Actually, I don't know what.
Just kidding, Josh.
This is like, it's out of here.
Oh, see, and I would have never known what that meant.
Well,
The
I just
GG.
realized I'm like, well, it would be GTG. Now I'm like, is
GTG.
GG different?
Yes.
Am I wrong? What do you mean, Joshua? Come back.
I just like purposely did not tell anybody that I work with that I was doing this. So,
Oh, really?
Well, you know, because I ended up going yesterday, and in our chat room there was like 7 GIFs made of me based off of our live stream.
Shoot.
Yeah,
Whoa,
so
okay.
it's a pretty rough bunch, man.
Wow.
I mean, they're all nice, but they got a mean streak in them. Oh, we could do a moon for tides. That works. We should probably use the water for the temperature, huh? Shoot.
The moon is good for, yeah, tides.
That's good.
Tim's like, you have to share all of the gifts, please. We do here really love our gifts.
I think.
We really love
I
them.
mean, I didn't get to go to design school or learn, like, I learned graphic design in college.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like there should just be like a Giphy course if you're in a design major. That
I would
be
take
pretty
that
good.
for sure.
Would that not be like the
That would
best
be awesome.
class? Everybody would get an
Everybody would get an A, is that what you said?
A. I would hope, right?
You would hope.
I don't know, maybe not.
I mean, I expect there to be one of us being twins at some point.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure now that I've mentioned any of this out loud that it's probably going to be really bad when I get back to the office, but that's all right. I will suck it up for the betterment of the Giphy world.
So kind of you.
Thanks you. You know, just trying to do my part. All right, let's group these things so we can actually like position them. How are we doing on time?
Got about 7 minutes
Oh, cool.
before we head into the
Oh yeah,
portion.
we have some good submissions today.
We definitely have some submissions coming through
Nice.
Discord.
Okay. Let's add another image. Ooh. All right. What else do we like in here? Oh, whoops. Wrong button. Cool.
Nice.
So, kind of digging where we were. Maybe we can do like a little bit of a from yesterday. Kind of tone down what we were talking about as far as this like big kind of call to action early. We talked about, you know, having some kind of close function on it, but now I think it's smaller. It kind of fits in nicely. We could even, you know, like you mentioned, when we start prototyping it, see if it needs to be sticky and stay, or if it actually just like flows out with the feed. But yeah, starting to feel a little bit nicer, very editorial, not so much social, which is cool. We add in just a date break so we remember. What's the day? 22nd. So let's say this is the 20th. But he yelled at me yesterday.
I know, I did.
better
That's why I
check.
chuckled at that. It's okay. I get the year wrong, which is worse than I feel like getting the
Yeah.
date wrong. Recently I said, oh yeah, it's 2014, right? Like really bad.
2014.
Mhm.
That's like
Yeah.
way bad.
Yeah, I'm living in an alternate time. It's bad.
Although maybe 2014 was a good year, you know?
Was it though? I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. It's my first year at GoPro.
Okay.
I can reminisce a little bit.
Yeah.
That was a good year. I'm with you. It can always be 2014.
Let's see. Justin said he sent his through Discord, so I'll make sure that maybe we can find his for review for today. Let me get to that portion.
Some good comments. It's making me want to go surfing, so I think that means you're doing a good job. Thank you. You should always want to go surfing. It's the hard part, living like 5 minutes from the ocean. This is just random Keanu massive avatar for you.
I feel like, no, I saw him just chilling on the side, and I was like, let's leave that for sure. Like, it's necessary.
Yeah. This is your Keanu Reeves art director, just leering over your screen, seeing what you're up to.
So Justin on the chat, send your XD Creative Challenge for today into the Discord one more time, just so we can make sure that we review yours if you want yours to be taken a look at and get some feedback from Charlie and myself.
Cool. So just talking about components here, I like the idea of making this guy. We were talking about using down a little bit. Talking about using the day. So let's break this in.
So Julia, I know you're saying that you were having some trouble uploading your Brain app because you're the video was too large. If you do have just like an XD link versus like the video, we can also take a look at that if you just hit the share button and create a link for us to review and send that through, then that'll work also. Nice. I like the time of day.
Yeah, it's kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if we should add maybe, let's see, should we add the time in here just so we have some context? I think we know because, well, you don't know what year it is, so we might want to add the time. Maybe we'll add the year.
Wow. Yeah?
Maybe,
okay.
Maybe. I caught you off guard with that one.
I was like, wow,
sorry.
okay.
You're
I was like, I'm trying to get on this Discord. I'm trying to be good.
Yeah, that's my bad. Sorry.
No, you're doing it.
You didn't see that one coming. That was like a blind side hit there.
You're good.
What do we got going in here? Yeah. See, and sometimes you do this too, where it's like you get all fancy. You use the repeat grid, and then you realize you forgot to name all your layers, so you got to go back through and do it. That's weird. Bunch of random stuff in there. Cleaned up a little bit. Call that one the morning update.
I do think it's time that I get a new laptop. I see like chat. I heard it as well. Like my computer started launching, and I quit everything. Yeah, I quit everything, and it's still. We're just getting those ocean. It's those ocean wave noises, kind of the beach sound, some wind.
Like some music. Or maybe we'll put like Hawaii 5.0 in the background.
Love a good Hawaii 5.0.
Since we watch.
Have heard of that.
There you
so
go.
now I feel like
nice.
I have to let you know every time I have.
I know.
Heard of
I was getting nervous
to defend myself.
The Bill and Ted's one, man. I don't know if you can come back from that one. I mean, yeah, this happened a lot at GoPro too. I feel like the age group or age difference between myself and some of the people, like we talked about, like Saved by the Bell.
I've heard of Saved by the Bell.
Sigh of relief.
Come on now.
All right. 90210. There's some goodies back in the day. All right, what are we thinking? Daytime colors. Aqua. Aquafina.
Aquafina.
No, I'm just kind of losing it. All right. Call this the afternoon update.
Cool, Julia. I'm glad that you were able to. Julia hadn't shared her designs with an XD link before, but that came through on Discord, so we'll definitely make sure that we take a look.
Nice.
And on that note, actually, we are at the countdown timer here. Right. So we're going to transition to take a look at the daily creative challenges that have been going on. I know we have a couple submissions. Today's was around drag gesture, but I know we have some people who are still working on some of the ones from yesterday and Tuesday, so we'll just take a look at some of the ones that have been coming in, and for those of you who are on, we want to make sure that we give you guys some feedback. So Julia, Justin, I know you guys were especially excited to get some feedback today, so I'm going to refresh Julia's here because I know that it is hooked up and it's going to run through like a video.
Oh, cool.
So we have the Matrix one here, and let's see if it runs through.
Syncing your brain.
Ooh, we have the
this is
Matrix
on brand.
coming down. I know, yeah.
Oh, this is awesome.
Cool. So I guess we would choose here one of these options. So look at documentary. And then we'd say yes. Very cool. I feel like, yeah, it's super on brand. I feel like the like Matrix, like using the animation or like prototyping aspect to do that type of animation is clever and not like necessarily like the go-to way that people would do some of this. So it's like cool to see also like the fade in, fade out of kind of like the syncing and kind of like little details. It's very like really fun, playful.
Just a fun like product idea too. I mean, like the design's awesome. Like he totally just like leaned into it and went for it.
Yeah.
Like it just made it work. I think it's hard. Like sometimes you want to use some of these like fun types and lockups, and I don't know. It just plays really well with like the product idea and just kind of this gamified version. I would say I don't know. My only feedback would be like the low being red on that black sometimes can be really tricky when you're talking about color. So maybe just lightening up the black a little bit, or excuse me, lightening up the red a little bit. But yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, and I feel like the choice of using like the pixelated, style text works in this case, just with like the style that you're going for and kind of playing with that. So awesome. Thank you, Julia, for the submission. I guess she said that she had to divide the image in Photoshop and animate each part.
Oh, wow.
A lot of time, but it came across really well. So the other one I want to take a look at is Justin's. I know Justin really wanted us to make sure that we gave some feedback on his. So Justin sent his in, and this one is also, I think, the brain challenge one, right? The
cool.
Human brain. So we have this sort of setup of the colors and fonts used, some key screens. Let's take a look. And then I believe we have a video here as well to take a look at. So let me zoom this out. Take a look. Ooh, it is interesting having like this divide of like the left and right kind of based off the brain.
I love the idea of like this. You don't see too many calendar selectors like this either. And it totally works.
There's a lot of detail and thought in this one going through. Right hemisphere.
Yeah, super cool. I think, going back to that screen with the calendar on the left and the you got the percentages and things, like my only feedback is like unless the gradient really is like telling a story there in the calendar, it seems a little distracting to me. Like it looks super cool, but really, like once I select August 17th, really my focus is on the content area. But because you have this really strong gradient over there, it's really drawing my eye. So unless there's like some like really important reason why it has the gradient there, maybe toning that down a little bit so it kind of falls into the background a bit, and then you can really focus in on, you know, the skills and the kind of the content on the right.
Yeah. I feel like the concept is super strong of like having this like split view based off like kind of like having the left and right side of your brain, which I think is really strong. I also think there is also like, I understand why you have the calendar on the left side here, because you were pushing everything over and you kind of had that moment in the middle there. The only thing I would consider and think about is generally most people are like right-handed, and so generally most of the like scrolling things that happen on the phone are kind of on the right-hand side, just because that's kind of where your thumb is. And so kind of thinking through how people are holding their phone and like what might be the easiest to kind of reach and tap through, and whether it makes sense to put it on the left and it's like worth that, or if it makes more sense in the design to figure out a way to still like have it come in maybe on the right side. But
yeah, I mean, even depending on phone size, right? Like a iPhone Max, maybe you can get away with it on the side, but smaller ones you go bottom or top or something.
Yeah. Very cool.
The only thing I would say too is like, I love the layout. We talked about this yesterday of just like telling that story on Behance and like just, you know, setting it up, talking about the challenge, the focus, like getting into all that. I think there's a fine line between like how far do you go with like designing that area so it almost doesn't take away from the great work that you've done in the like the actual challenge part. So like the gradients on the background where the colors are might be a bit much to me, where it's actually kind of like I want to focus more on the work. So, you know, layouts and case studies when you're building those together, I think it's always, you know, the work is the focus.
Yeah.
Like make sure that that's the part that's like really amped up.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, it's a little small. I feel like I can click in, but still like in the large view, like this type is a little small to read. So just thinking through that, but you have I feel like all the elements are here that like
great.
you have. Yeah, the content is awesome. Cool, thank you for your submission, Justin. I'm glad we were able to take a look. I want to make sure that we look at some for the e-reader one that was the challenge specifically for today that has come out. So we have a submission from Ryan with about the challenge and the focus.
Oh, nice.
Speaking of New York Times.
Yeah. I feel like it's like this was all planned, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
Man, this thing runs smooth sometimes, right?
Yeah. The way you guys are putting in the Kool-Aid over there. But
Yeah. I like this, like having this mock-up view is really nice.
Super cool.
Adjustable text size.
Yeah, that's a great case study too. Just again focusing in on what it's doing, but then kind of these like little bite-sized chunks, these like little micro interactions that you might miss in a video, calling them out.
Yeah.
Color palette.
Yeah, and like we talked about, it's like kind of having these little digestible pieces, and then eventually getting to like the whole like the interaction or the entire thing at the end.
Yeah.
Cool. So make sure we'll take a look at this video. I think with the e-reader too, like thinking through having those different type sizes or the different modes is nice.
Yeah.
Ooh, and I can see like you have
That's cool.
a slide gesture, which is nice to prototype through, versus just like a tap. Nice. Thoughts on this one?
I think it's awesome. I think the only thing that jumps out at me is really on the cover photo is somehow making that blue header tab maybe not be so dominant. You see this like a lot in music players where it will kind of maybe do like a blur back there, and it will just pick up what other colors back there and kind of just have it feel like it's more full screen, which could be really cool. But once you get into like the actual pages and stuff, it's looking awesome. You know, you were talking about white space earlier. I think even here you could get away with just doing black icons at the top. You know, let the imagery kind of be your color, and then you know, keep it really clean. And you could almost do like a light and a dark mode based off of that,
Totally.
which would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I do also like the having a sense of where you are a little bit. Like you do have this kind of like loading thing. So like as you're kind of swiping through or going through, even though you don't have, well, you also have like some page numbers or something at the bottom, but there's still kind of like this sense of how far along or like the progress that you've made.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
this looks great. Yeah, I love like seeing this view also. Just kind of switch it up a little bit. So thanks for the submission, Ryan. We're gonna take a look at. You want to do one more?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So we have a submission from Max, and this one is also for e-reader, which was today's. Cool.
That's
So
cool.
showing some states of like
Yeah.
deleting.
A little more retro feel to it. It's pretty fun.
We also have sort of a slide through pages, it seems like. Cool. So we'll take a look at this video.
Yeah, this is cool.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like thinking through like having the little cards and that sort of standard UI or something that's common now, and having the like some controls that happen underneath it when you swipe left or right is nice to just like quickly kind of have a way to like bookmark something or favorite it.
Yeah. No, it's super cool. I love those little interactions. I like the kind of little retro, feels like I'm going back to like the library and, you know, pulling something off the shelf. I think we were talking about it with the Matrix one too. It's like sometimes it just totally works and you can totally just lean into a certain style. And then sometimes it's like little bits and pieces to, you know, get the feeling there, the brand there, and then maybe not go too crazy. The only places that like are kind of throwing me is the bookmark over the Ready Player One. Like maybe it gets a little lost in there and kind of feeds into your grading in the top right. So maybe just doing something like a little bit more subdued there, that maybe like a star or just, you know, a heart or something that's a little bit more known in kind of that digital space. Might help kind of clean things up a little bit.
Totally. Plus, I think like you have your green, which is kind of like your check mark, which makes sense, and you have this kind of salmon color for delete, which makes a lot of sense for like how those colors are used. But then also using it as like a selected state, I feel like you could use a different color, like use that green, or think about kind of how you're using the colors for people to know like, hey, this is something that you're like getting rid of versus this is something that's being selected and added, because you use that green or a green again for like add to favorites. So yeah, kind of maybe just save like that salmon color maybe for just like delete actions or something like that in this case.
That's a great call out.
Cool. Awesome. We had so many submissions today. I feel like we could take a look at like a bajillion more.
It's so quick too, right? Because they just did it like an hour or 2 hours ago?
These for sure, for the e-reader ones, like these like just, that one just came out right before our stream for the announcement of what today's challenge was. So
awesome.
We had,
I can barely get through
here.
like a page and a half. You guys are designing full apps.
Yeah, so we had, the drag gesture today with the e-reader. And then we had some that were still coming in from like the Neuralink inspired one. And
Nice.
There's a ton of these. So thank you guys for submitting. Make sure that we have another one again tomorrow if you're interested in checking out the Daily Creative Challenge. And whoever's on the stream will be able to provide feedback for you guys. But awesome work. Thank you guys for submitting. And we're going to jump right back on into what Charlie's been working on with Point Break.
Point Break.
Makes me so happy to
I
say
know.
that.
Well, especially now that you've seen the movie.
Now that
right?
I've seen, yes. Can you, aren't you like...
I feel like you didn't know you yesterday.
I know,
like,
right? Different human.
You came in today and it was just like, we've just been friends forever since like 2014.
Since 2000. God, what a nod.
What a nod. Good callback, right?
Yeah. It was like it was yesterday for me.
Oh, the puns. Super funny. I wonder if anybody else is having a good time. It is weird. I obviously this is the first time I've done this and it's been super fun.
Right.
And thanks for having me again. But like, at least like when you're speaking like at a conference, you get a little bit of that feedback.
You get a sense, yeah.
It's just like.
Or you have no sense, yeah.
Yeah. No, there's been no like super strong like caps used in the chat yet, so I feel like we're
I feel like
Okay.
like Paco's been like fielding those. No, I'm just kidding. Like he's like, oh yeah.
Paco took it a step. He's filtering it out.
He's like, oh no.
I was wondering why you were typing so much.
Yeah, it is always hard to gauge, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess as long as we're having fun, right? That's all that matters.
Yeah, thanks, Paco. Can't go wrong with Keanu.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really can't.
Oh, Hillary's having a good time.
Oh, Hillary, thank you. Tim silently judging you. Cool.
That's okay.
Not surprised.
I'm okay with that. Cool. What are we working on? So we're setting up the different time of day components. So actually, I don't know. I kind of go back and forth sometimes how I set this up. So sometimes I'll make each one of these things a component. Sometimes I'll make the whole thing a component. I think for right now, since we're doing like 3 different states, I'll probably just make each one. And then over here, we'll get rid of this one. Jump into the library. Update. And drag back. Oops. Don't do that. Do that. And then I'll just throw all 3 of these things in a layer together. And this works really good with like buttons, like so you have your hover states and your active states, your air states, and then you can kind of keep that whole component within one, but each individual component you can still change in that master layer. Just make sure these colors are still working good here. Kind of digging this color palette.
Yeah, it came out well.
Just call it surf updates. Then when you open that up, you can just turn them on, turn them off. Keep them in chronological order. Because I'm kind of crazy. Cool, so we got all those in. Tighten up some of the spacing. I think too, I know we're kind of, how much time have we got? 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. Yeah.
Let's go with 10 minutes.
Yeah, just under. Yeah.
So I know we were talking about it like a little bit earlier. If we had time talking about just some of the other like principles of a design system are super great. I think, you know, having worked with design systems for a lot in the last 6 or 7 years, it's not so much just about creating the components, and then I think we made the analogy yesterday, maybe on air or off, about like if you got something from IKEA but it didn't come with the instructions, you could probably still put the thing together, but if you had to repeat that every time, it would be really difficult. So having those, like that documentation is super great. Coming up with a list of principles that also roll into like the product principles is great, or even like the company philosophy, so that when you do have an org that's larger and you have designers going off and creating pages and they have questions of how to solve a certain problem, they can always go back to that and help them guide of how they're making decisions, and they can say, oh, I chose this because I think one of the cool principles we had at GoPro was make it feel addictive, like the hardware experience of the camera felt that way. So like that was one of the principles for the design system. And when you design, like, is this experience one that you'd want to keep coming back to, or does it just feel like kind of like a one-off? So I think that stuff is super helpful. I know we're in XD, we're talking about that, but when you're actually like building out a full system, the documentation is super helpful.
Yeah, and I think like you bring up a good point of kind of the design principles of something, like just kind of defining that also, so you have a sense of like what that vision or what that look and feel should really be, or like some of the parameters of like we want it to be addictive, or we want it to be intuitive, or like whatever those sort of attributes. You can always go back to those and kind of make sure that like you're still on the right track for what you're aiming for with whatever it is that you're designing.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's all these little things, right? It's it's not just visual design, it's not just UX, it's not just research. It's it's all coming together to work as an ecosystem, and collectively to make sure that you're building the best product for the users. Just in case there's a couple more updates in there. Stick with that blue. Cool.
I laugh now every time I see Johnny Utah.
It's going to be one of those things that you're not going to be able to not see it.
No.
And then this kind of just goes back to like what I was talking about yesterday is like as I'm going, I'm just kind of, this is, to be honest with you, this is probably a little bit more structured just because of the stream than I will. Like I get a little bit more loose on the design system pages that I have because I'm just really kind of like throwing stuff over, making components, and then bringing them back and whatnot. And then kind of going back and doing a lot of housekeeping in the system page. In the actual file, I'd probably do that a little bit more while I'm designing. Just kind of depends.
Nice, yeah. And Julia on the chat says, love the yellow combined with the blue colors. Yeah, I feel like the color palette has come together nicely, even though, like, because we had so many choices to go with. But.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's pretty limited what we've got here so far. We've only done a couple pages, but you can see we could already get rid of a ton of these that just aren't really needed anymore. But they're not hurting anybody,
Yeah.
Not
we
yet.
hope, yeah.
Until somebody shows up in a review and you're like, where did that color come from? It was in the file. I have had that happen before.
Have you?
Yeah. You gotta be careful sometimes. Cool. Why didn't that change names? No.
That's a good question. Julia's sort of wondering what you might be doing with this project. Are you going to do anything with it after this stream, like share it on Behance or finish it out, or is it just sort of going through it today? Or
Actually, I think I want to finish it out. I had this idea like 2 or 3 years ago, and it's just one of those things that just got stuck in my notebook and never really revisited. And now I'm like, I just went like full silent mode there for a second. I'm kind of getting into it, so
Yeah.
I think I would love to finish it out. I think, like I said, I think it's a really fun idea. I don't know if it would be super successful as a product because I don't know if the audience is there, but
I'll get it. You got one. You got at least one person with you.
One person.
I'm gonna get it.
I think my group of friends would love
I
it
think,
for
yeah.
sure.
You got a lot of people.
Yeah, and we all know Johnny Utah would
Johnny Utah is all for it.
would be for it.
Cool. Well, maybe you want to give a sense of sort of where you started and
Yeah, wrap
everything
it
you've
all
kind of
up,
gone
huh?
through. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, originally we kind of touched on it earlier. We started with this idea that kind of just stemmed from some life experiences, and my process starts here, whether it's paper, post-it notes, whiteboard. Really, the goal for me is to start at such a low fidelity that I'm not attached to anything, whether it's a layout, an idea. It's super easy to write something down and then never come back to it. But as soon as it gets into the pixels, it gets a little bit harder. So I just really force myself to live in this world. Actually, at home, I have 2 different desks. I have a digital desk and a analog desk. So I can do the paperwork on one side, and I'm not even tempted by technology, which if you need those constraints, I definitely say put them in. And then from there, just jumping into kind of the wires and the flows and starting to flush out some of those early ideas. And then from a design system standpoint, this is where we started to really kind of hone in on some components, avatars, form fields, buttons, type, all that good stuff. You start to see it coming together in kind of these big shapes. And then so we're kind of going back and forth between here and the design system. And then today, it was really about kind of putting all that together. So we jumped into kind of some more of that visual design. And again, you can see the splash page is pretty spot on. We didn't really change too much there, but the feed page, kind of formed quite a bit. And that's kind of the way I work, you know.
Yeah.
Not locked into anything, still letting those ideas kind of come to me and go. And then from the system side, you know, we've been building this out over the last few days. Started with the color palette. I think you made a mention that you kind of take pictures out in the wild. I found this kind of series of colors in a poster that I was kind of digging, so brought that in. Pretty typical type ramp that I've been using, so starting there, but still okay, you know, changing it. And then we've just been building since then. You know, some avatars, navigation, form fields, buttons, kind of our updates here. So yeah.
Keanu, yeah. I mean, you should clearly be in the design system at some point. Yeah.
I think we should call the design system Keanu.
Yes. Wait, so good.
Yes.
Cool. Well, I want to give a few big thank yous. First and foremost to Charlie for being with us on the stream today. It was awesome having you here. And thank you to all of you guys who have tuned in. I know you were from all over the world and like early, late in the afternoon. Really appreciate you sticking with us, talking design, Keanu, and everything else. So I hope you had a good time, and make sure that you stream into all the rest of the live streams coming on tomorrow. Thank you.
See ya.